Hello, everyone. We have an incredible guest today. I am so happy to introduce Rashmi Nagpal. She is an MIT researcher working at an incubator within MIT, and she is the ultimate authority on large language models, security, and privacy. And I can't wait to hear more about her journey into the space. Rashmi, tell me more. How did you get introduced into the artificial intelligence space and what makes you excited about it?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Vicky, for having me. It's just a pleasure to be on your podcast. I started working in this space in 2018 when I saw how the technology could have a huge impact at scale. And then I was back in my hometown and trying to just leverage the technology altogether. How can we provide the vaccines to the people in the vicinity? So, working with the government of India during the time and just building the features around more technology, uses of the LLMs and AI posting around that time. So, it really helped me and started making the career around it.
I really love that. Unfortunately, the pandemic really taught us how to do things at scale. And I know that's something you're really passionate about, really around this vaccine application that you've built, but you've also actually organized a hackathon, right, in India as well. And we're a part of it, and you saw it come alive. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Sure. So during the COVID hit, a lot of educational institutes, colleges, universities, they were all shut down and no one was sure when they are going to get open up. And there was no meetups, no networking events around. I was doing an internship at VAs at that time, which is again a global platform organization connecting a lot of women around the globe and just providing them more boost. So I was working with them and I was leading this hackathon on the country level altogether. And women from all around the country, from even the villages all around, they also join in for this hackathon. It's a week long and around 400 teams were there. They were all building different prototypes, IBM, Sequoia Capital, all of these big organizations. They were also flooding in a lot of their money and supporting and providing the mentorship. That really gave me the push that how much technology could impact on such a larger scale, and that too in a developing country like in India. That boosted me, and again goes back to my thread as giving back to my community is always I aspire for.
Tell me about the work you're doing there and why do you think this is an incredible opportunity for women to get into technology?
Sure. I would say that I am in a position where I'm a researcher and an engineer because there is an entire village behind me who really pushed me, who really helped me and envisioned the way that I couldn't even think about myself. So the sense of giving back to the community and having the right mentors, right set of the people around the environment has really groomed me, and which has made me realize that how much environment plays a lot of role in grooming you, in positioning you as a position that you can't even envision yourself. The women in technology, I do a lot of initiatives, not just Women Who Go, wherein I teach Go programming language, but Women Who Code and also give lectures globally and just trying to be moving the needle a little bit, just to inspire the people around that the skills is what all matters, not the gender or the ethnicity where you're belonging from. As long as you can communicate, being kind to the others, being respectful to the others, and just really pushing each other forward and motivating and leaving the world a better place from where we came in from.
I really love that. That really inspires me. And I know it inspires a lot of people in technology because a lot of times in technology, you might have 20% women, 30% women. I know I was one of maybe two or three in my class when I was graduating with large language models and artificial intelligence and generative AI no longer requiring computer programming skills, but really being able to communicate with machines using your natural language. It's opening up opportunity for many different people to come and try it. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, absolutely. One needs to have the communication, the plain simple English, and one can always play around with different prompts altogether, even ask the LLMs, what is the best way to ask you a question? You provide the template and just taking as a friendly buddy altogether rather than taking as an, because All these LLMs, all these chatbots, they have a lot of depth of the knowledge that human can't even comprehend a lot of that knowledge
Yeah,
together. So why not to take it as a buddy and be an educator altogether and ask a lot of questions? And it's not going to judge for sure, but you can play around and just be with its personality and tweak around personality. Yeah.
that's exactly it. And that's how I think about it. You could even give it a name that makes it more friendly. I love how Anthropic calls their generative AI Claude. And I always tell, oh, Claude, my friend. And they're like, who's Claude? I'm like, Claude knows everything. Let me check with him. Okay. So, because a lot of the Terminator movies make it seem like artificial intelligence is going to come take over the world and we have to be afraid. And so that's almost kind of closing the minds of a lot of people saying, I don't want that. That's not what I'm looking for. But if you look at it as a friendly buddy, like you said, it opens up that opportunity to have a conversation. Is that how you do it? Or what is your way of interacting with machines or generative AI?
Sure. So, in terms of the prompt engineering, sometimes I also struggle a lot. What is the right prompt? Oh, this is not giving response that I'm expecting,
Right.
right? It hallucinates or gives a confabulated response or something. But it's how you learn and grow as a buddy, right? Your buddy is not judging you, but in fact, you are taking the buddy in your own stride
Yeah.
and working together for that. So that's how I interact that, okay, this is what the goal of mine is. And this is what I really want to understand. What is the best way to approach this problem set? And then give me the response. Sometimes the response are plausible. Like it seems to be correct, but actually they're not.
Yeah.
And then I have to re-ask. The feedback loop goes in. So yeah, I enjoy this back and forth which happens.
And I just for the audience, confabulated response. So it's a response that's not completely wrong, but has portions of it that's not correct. Is that right? Yeah. So those are the hardest ones, right? Because to me, that's where critical thinking and domain knowledge comes in because everything might look perfect,
Yes.
but there's something off. And if you copy and paste and assume it's correct, you are still responsible for that response as a human. So let's talk a little bit about that, like confabulations, hallucinations, all of that interesting stuff. And how do we make people comfortable? How are you as a human make yourself comfortable with the range of responses you might get?
Right. I think we already know the ground truth, like the models are not humongous data set. And no model is ideal or perfect in this world. And I often say that the world in itself is not perfect. So how can we expect the models to be ideal in that sense? But instead of taking as a negative aspect of looking into the LLMs, which is giving the falsified information sometimes, or just even hallucinating, how about we add more RAG architecture to it, or maybe a verifier on top of it, which helps in validating what is the ground truth and how the model is deviating from that ground truth. Then it becomes you can reduce your error rate of the responses. Let's say the model has given what is the national fruit of India, and it says something else, which is not what the national fruit of India is. But if you have the knowledge base, which gives you the information about what is the national fruit of India, then the model is bound to have a certain context. Then the model is giving the response within that own context altogether. That is a trick and a fabrication that you can use while just to make sure that the model is not hallucinating or giving the haywire responses.
And I think you can already do some of that with, I know Anthropic, you can upload like a spreadsheet or a document and
Yeah.
create a prompt around it.
Yes, that's one way you can do that, but you can also build a
Okay.
knowledge base around it, like for larger applications. Like in terms of any threat intelligence application or just in cybersecurity, any application that you want to build, you can lay the context by having a knowledge base altogether. It's a database. So you have information in the database, and then the model, which the responsive model is giving, can verify from that database altogether. Then in that way, yeah, the responses are going to be like less of the false positive at least.
I really like that. So talk me through like the security aspect of this. You mentioned it, and I want to dive deeper into it because security is becoming a bigger and bigger concern, right? It's usually developers, they put stuff out there and then we're like, oh, we screwed something up. As more and more organizations create their own version of an
Right.
application, an agent, a RAG model, whatever it might be, what are the security concerns that they should be thinking through?
My present work at Patstack as a machine learning engineer is, can we identify the code vulnerabilities which we are writing or the plugin developers are doing it? So what I meant by is whatever the code a developer is writing, it's bound to have, or it's more susceptible to have any kind of possible vulnerability you can think about. Maybe it could lead to some DDoS attack, could be SQL injection, could be XSS, any kind of possible vulnerability. So what I think security is the end goal, but it should be the starting goal. It should be baked in the product from the beginnings. Like security principles should be checked in. There has to be certain principles one needs to follow, right? We often say that complexity is the enemy of the security. And what one needs to follow this kind of a principle, which is keep it simple and stupid principle, and then needs to have the separation of the concerns, like which particular microservice architecture is responsible for login, the other is responsible for different functionality altogether, and making it the code as modular as possible. So again, coming back to the security aspect, one needs to have the ground truth, or I would say the ground base. For example, whenever we are building any develop, or maybe like just building any building altogether, the construction workers, they are building the base very stronger, right? Security principles needs to bake in before even deploying or building an application by following a certain set of principles is what I'm saying, that the developer needs to have more thought on this before even starting implementing anything.
I know that it's a passion, something you think about a lot, and something we need to be aware of. So let's define what is bias within large language models.
Sure. So I'll go with one of the questions that you asked me before, that how the LLM's security altogether space leads to the bias. So using the LLMs for any of the privacy security or cybersecurity applications altogether also leads some biases. And how I define the biases, really just a discrimination of what the output is the model is giving. So years ago there was a paper which came in, which is the heading of that paper was "A man is to a programmer, a woman is to a homemaker."
Oh.
Yes. So if you see the title of the paper itself, the man is to programmer, a woman is to homemaker, right? Like, let's say this sentence as a tokenized, man is one token and then programmer is one token, women is one token and the homemaker is another token, right?
Yeah.
Like you're splitting the sentences at different words, honestly, altogether. And if you see which says like in this entire paper altogether, there is a lot of bias, selection bias, implicit bias, cognitive bias, a lot of biases it has mentioned. And it has also mentioned the ways to mitigate the bias. Are
Mhm.
we aware about the biases which is prevalent in our society altogether before using any of these LLM? And the fun fact which came in was you can see the affinity of a man which is more towards a programmer than a woman towards a programmer. Like a woman has more affinity towards a homemaker, a receptionist, rather than a pilot or rather than business women or something. And that's one of the generic algorithms that we used in NLP, and it's been used throughout, which is one of the word to vec. So, how this bias is actually perpetuated is also an interesting question that one needs to look into. Not just the cognitive bias of the humans that we have, but the data that we put in while we are training the model. We often say that garbage in, garbage out, right? So, if the data itself is biased, then of course you're going to get like the skewed results or distribution of the output. So, really fascinated about this topic and always try to inspire or put a seed of curiosity within the developers or the engineers with whom I had a conversation about this, just to think from a different angle altogether about building responsible AI solutions.
And I love that you're thinking about it. I think critical thinking is so important about any topic, any result you might get. But just from a bias perspective, what we need to remember is large language models were mostly trained on internet information. And internet information is, like you said, a lot of it is garbage. And unfortunately, that bias is now inherent in these models. Now, ourselves, how can we recognize it? And are there steps we can take to mitigate that bias when we see it?
I also myself struggle when understanding how can I recognize my own blind spots, or how can I recognize the algorithm that I implemented. Having the check places and having the multiple stakeholders. For example, as an engineer, when I'm working, I have multiple stakeholders. I have product manager, I have CTOs whenever we are deploying any application, and the end users and the consumers all together. So in this entire cycle, having the constant feedback, putting in different stakeholders and understanding from the perception how the model is performing or what the output our product is giving, it is justifying and seeking really the feedback from them. I'm pretty sure you must have heard back in 2016 or 2018, there was an algorithm by Amazon. It's a hiring algorithm. They had to roll it back because it was discarding all the women applicants even though they are equally qualified for a certain position within the Amazon itself. So I'm just proposing a seat for the developers or the implementation engineers around that before developing or any product which has been scaled and deployed, can we actually have multiple stakeholders sit together, do the thorough vetting and auditing of the service which has been deployed, putting the consumer as one of the central goals within it, and then building an application and auditing the application around it.
So you really want to put those requirements up front instead of having it go out there, make mistakes, and then being pulled back because people recognize that it's not working the way it was intended. And now with AI agents, again, coding themselves, communicating and organizing themselves, right? As we look at that, with the human out of the loop many times in that
Right.
communication, how do we ensure that bias doesn't persist machine to machine? Because machine doesn't have any way to recognize that bias themselves. They don't have that human experience. Or maybe it does, and I'm wrong about that. I'd love for you to challenge me on that.
I think a lot of principles are in place right now and a lot of new models, which is making the model think and deep search all of these, thinking and reasoning, rationally thinking about why this possible answer is coming around. And what is the reason? What is the confidence score? Why this particular output around it? How can we actually test and validate the responses given by the models and they are not hallucinating versus they are not giving any biased or skewed responses?
That's something we have to build. To your point, it's something we'll
Right.
need to build in because as the human comes out of the middle more and more, and we do
Yes.
have our blind spots and biases, but machines are like the children that they've seen all the evil in the world, right? And now they're in charge of things. And so, how do they respond to that? And how do we give them those boundaries not to go above and beyond what they need to do? And I think that's really critical and something that I know governments are trying to establish. I know European unions has some laws around artificial intelligence. So, how would you move forward? What's interesting, like things are changing all the time in
Yes.
artificial intelligence. Every day there's a new model, there's a new application of that model. How do you stay on top of all that and just of all the changes? How do you teach yourself and learn?
For my research work, honestly, I have built a lot of agentic architecture around, just like treating as a junior researcher. And you're right. I also feel overwhelmed at times that, oh, new model is there and there's a new benchmark, new state of the art principle is there. There's a new model which I want to try. Sometimes I struggle myself not to look in the Hacker News or the like Reddit
Right.
local llama
Yeah.
subreddit around it. But I think there is an innate curiosity within me, and I'm pretty sure it's within all of us as humans. We have this innate curiosity. We want to learn more. We want to understand how things are working behind the wheels. And that pushes me to understand, read the papers, just skimming through every morning. New papers are there. I have a lot of friends around. Those are also high with the AI technologies, which really inspire me and put me on the front seat to understand. Oh, there is a new state of the art model which has been released. So, yeah, that's pretty much how I stay afloat and surviving in this world.
It's hard. It changes so quickly. I
Yes.
think the rapid nature of change is
Mhm.
so great. And then I was thinking like the technology I was taught 25 years ago is completely different now. So you sound to me like you're very optimistic about the
Mhm.
potential around artificial intelligence and the work that it will create. I wanted to go back to that because I know there's a lot of
Right.
fear that AI is going to take over. We're not going to have jobs. Is that
That's very
true?
much for sure. Coming back to your previous point, I think I will also say that change is inevitable. Like we have a lot of LLM space. There is a DeepSeek R1 model which has been released, and a lot of people were saying it requires less funding to train the models, the foundation models, as compared to what is being projected around. Having said that, a lot of optimization, a lot of changes in the architecture, new LLMs which are being popped up every day in and out. But I would still say sticking to the first principles is really important. One needs to understand the basic mechanics, like what is the supervised modeling around, or what is pre training, really. So, having the fundamentals, or I would say the first principles, strong by anyone, it's easier to stay on top, and it's easier to understand and comprehend why this new model is a state of the art model. So, that will really help in not feeling overwhelmed.
You have to have that foundation. Are there courses that you would recommend, like foundations of artificial intelligence?
A lot of noises out there. There's one deep learning course that's very fresh and new by Alexander Amini. Yes, that's a prof. And he has released this deep learning series. It's a small course, but it really covers strong fundamentals and first principles, thinking through first principles, which really helps in understanding.
I love that. And is that accessible to anyone, or do you have to be
Yes.
an IT student? Okay.
No, it's an open source cluster. Yes, it's open for everyone.
Okay. Okay. So I'll have to put a link in the notes here because I would love for others to take it. Definitely let me know what that link is. We can search it out. I think the foundations are important because you're right. Once you have that foundational knowledge, it's very much easier. You won't know all the answers, but you'll be able to reason through the answer on your own,
Right,
which is where you
right.
want to be.
And that's how you can actually stay optimistic about the new jobs opportunities which will pop up if you know about the fundamentals, if you're clear about the fundamentals and the first principles. Then it's easier to navigate through this new jobs which might pop up because of the AI tools and techniques there are. And at the same time, I feel, of course, there will be some redundancy and the cut of the jobs which will happen, but mostly that's because of the manual labor. AI is going to permeate in our, it's going to be malleable in our lives so much so that it will be impossible to see a world without an AI in the near future, for me at least. But at the same time, I would still say people to stay optimistic, learn through the first principles, understanding the basics is important, and new job opportunities. Like no one knew about what is a prompt engineer back in the day. Now we have this prompt engineer profession altogether.
Everybody's, you got to have your own collection of prompts. It's the new library, right? It's like instead of the library of books, now we have the library of prompts.
I
Well,
love this.
yeah. We should create our new library of prompts. I think that would be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on it.
I really like that. And because these jobs like prompt engineer and who knows what else, I think about how an average person would use artificial intelligence. Not like us who are in the field trying to make sense of it at a scale, but really like
Right.
someone who's just trying to use it daily for their own purpose. And we talk a lot about inference models or applications, and I hear a lot about inference in the cloud, people doing that. I heard a podcast, the guy said, no,
Yeah.
you don't need it in the cloud. It's all going to be on your phone. And the phones will be powerful enough to do all quick AI tasks and calculations.
So in India, there is a UPI system which is you just scan and then you do the payment. Even the vendors or even the local chai walas, they will always have this app. So you don't have to carry the cash everywhere, which is one of the biggest improvements has happened in the Bharat and making the Viksit Bharat altogether. And having said that, so I see the AI being so much infused in our lives. In fact, my granny, she was not able to understand which medicine she has to take. So what she did was just scan the medicine and then the big words in Hindi popped up And then she was able to understand, oh, this medicine she has to take during the dinner time. The OCR functionality and the voice audio, which was able to convert from English to Hindi, which is the native language over here, like in India, she was able to understand and she was able to make a decision because of the poor eyesight. No one was there in the vicinity. So I see like these examples all around, and I see so much proud, even though I'm working in a small trajectory altogether, but the contribution that the entire community is building in terms of the AI space and building different use cases. I see the impact on such a granular and an unfathomable way that I'm really blessed to be born in this. And I can see the era of AI which is coming in.
Aren't we? I agree with you. Even if you don't do anything with AI, just watching it develop is something that's so rare in the existence of humanity as a whole. So we're here during an incredible time, a dangerous time that we have to be aware of our
Yeah.
biases, that we put security guardrails in place, that we understand the implications of what is happening. But at the same time, we're just like the sky, like just being fascinated with the development of where it's going because nobody knows where it's going. You talk to the smartest people in the room when they're like, I don't know. What do you tell your kids to graduate in terms of major? I don't know.
You know,
Be a good, kind person. That's usually going to take you through life pretty well. As
yeah.
everything else, it's hard to tell right now.
Of course, I agree to that. Being good and kind individual, but playing around with all these new tools and techniques, and you never know you want to work with the quantum AI which is coming in.
Yeah. So, how do we, some words of wisdom? You strike me, Rashmi, as a very wise person. I can feel it in your soul. You understand the implications, what are some of the words of wisdom that you want to leave the audience as they think about artificial intelligence?
Sure. I feel like I still have a long way to go, but what I am is because of a lot of village of the people behind me, those who have pushed me to where I am, and I'm super grateful. Having said that, I feel the last words about the AI is one needs to be really optimistic about the endless world of possibilities that AI might bring for us. But at the same time, staying on the forefront might seem overwhelming. So it's really important to have the checkpoints in place, not getting too overwhelmed, but staying up front at the same time and building different applications, which will really help in understanding the impact of the technology at such a granular or at such a big scale altogether.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Just stay for the ride, right?
Yes, it's a roller
Nobody
coaster
knows where
ride.
we're going, but we know it's going to be fun and exciting, and we're all going to learn something from it for sure.
Tighten your seatbelt. That's what we say.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Rashmi, such an amazing person. I'm so grateful for you taking the time. I'm grateful for your village that encouraged you
Thank
to develop and learn in this space because technology is better off because you're in it. And thank you for everything you do to encourage other women to take up technology and use it and become proficient in it.
thank you for all the work that you do for all of us, empowering and sharing so much knowledge.
Thank you.